On Christmas morning, my husband's family handed out gifts to everyone except me. His mom smirked and whispered, "She won't last another year anyway." I froze. My husband laughed. I said nothing. 2 weeks later, the will was read and my name was on everything they thought they'd inherited. I never expected Christmas to be the day everything fell apart. I used to love Christmas. Growing up in a small town in Connecticut, my mom would go all out stringing lights around the windows, baking sugar cookies that made the whole house smell like heaven, and playing Bing Crosby's White Christmas on repeat. But that was before I married into his family. My husband, Bryce, came from money. Old money. The kind that bought private schools, yachts, and summer homes in the Hamptons without a second thought. When we first met, I was working as a paralegal in Boston. Bryce was charming, confident, and so damn persuasive. He swept me off my feet with candlelit dinners and spontaneous weekend getaways to Nantucket. 2 years later, he proposed on a yacht in Martha's Vineyard. I should have known then. It wasn't about love, it was about appearances. But I was young. I wanted the fairy tale. And for a while, I convinced myself I had it. By the time Christmas rolled around last year, things between Bryce and me were strained, to say the least. We'd been married for 6 years, and I was starting to feel like a ghost in my own life. I'd given up my career to support him, attended every dull charity event his family dragged me to, and smiled through every passive-aggressive comment his mother, Margaret, threw my way. But that Christmas? That was the breaking point. We were at Margaret's estate in Newport, Rhode Island. The kind of house that looked like it belonged in a Better Homes and Gardens, spread marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the ocean. The entire Chamberlain clan was there. Bryce's younger sister, Alana, and her husband, Zane, flew in from San Francisco. His cousin, Maya, brought her new boyfriend, a Wall Street guy named Derek who couldn't stop checking his phone. Even Harold, Margaret's husband, who usually stayed out of the family drama, was there, nursing a glass of scotch in the corner. Everyone was gathered in the grand living room, unwrapping presents by the fire. I sat beside Bryce, trying to look engaged as Alana squealed over the diamond tennis bracelet Margaret had given her. "Isn't it gorgeous?" she gushed, holding it up for everyone to admire. "Absolutely," I murmured, forcing a smile. Zane unwrapped an expensive leather jacket. Maya opened a box with a limited edition Rolex. Even Harold's brother, Peter, who barely showed up to family events, got a bottle of 25-year-old Macallan whiskey. The pile of presents dwindled until there was nothing left. And I had nothing. I blinked, tried to hide the heat rising in my cheeks. Maybe they forgot? I glanced at Bryce. He was sipping his coffee, looking completely unfazed. "Did I miss something?" I asked softly, leaning closer. Bryce barely looked at me. "Huh, where's my gift?" I tried to keep my voice light, but my heart was pounding. Bryce's eyes flicked toward his mother. Margaret was watching me, and then she smiled. That cold, condescending smile I'd grown so familiar with over the years. "Oh, Jenna," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "We didn't think it was necessary this year." Silence fell over the room. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me. My throat went dry. "What?" Margaret leaned in closer, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. "She won't last another year anyway," she murmured. I froze. My ears started ringing. I felt like I was underwater, like the air had been guzzled out of the room. And then, Bryce laughed. He didn't say anything, didn't correct her, didn't defend me. He laughed. I couldn't breathe. I blinked back, tears, my fingers digging into the fabric of my dress as I forced a smile. "Excuse me," I murmured, standing up. I walked out of the room, but I could still feel their eyes on me. When we got back to our townhouse in Boston, I tried to talk to Bryce. "Did you hear what your mom said to me?" I asked, my voice shaking as I stood in the kitchen. He was scrolling through his phone, not even looking up. "Jenna, don't start," he muttered. "Don't start?" I repeated, my voice rising. "She said I wouldn't last another year, Bryce." And you laughed. He finally looked up, his expression bored. "You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I felt like I was losing my mind. "Bryce, your family treated me like I didn't even exist. They gave gifts to everyone except me. And your mother, she's old-fashioned," he interrupted, rolling his eyes. "She doesn't mean anything by it." "That's not an excuse," I snapped, my hands trembling. "Jesus, Jenna," he sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the problem. "Why do you always have to make a big deal out of everything?" I stared at him, feeling something inside me crack. I didn't recognize this man anymore. After that, I stopped trying. I stopped begging for his attention. Stopped hoping he'd stand up for me. I threw myself into work, taking on freelance legal consulting projects just to keep my mind busy. But the distance between us grew wider with each passing day. I knew it was over. 2 weeks after that disastrous Christmas, Margaret died. Heart attack. It was sudden. The funeral was a grand intrigue, of course. The church was packed with family, friends, and enough society elites to fill a ballroom. I stood beside Bryce, holding his hand, playing the dutiful wife while his family whispered behind my back. But the real stunner came after the funeral, when the will was read. We gathered in Harold's study, the air heavy with anticipation. Mr. Callahan, the family attorney, sat at the head of the table, glasses perched on the edge of his nose as he read through Margaret's wishes. Bryce was beside me, looking bored. Alana was practically vibrating with excitement. And then the nuke dropped. To my daughter-in-law, Jenna, my head snapped up. I'll leave the family estate in Newport. The room went dead silent. Alana's jaw dropped. Zane's face turned beet red. Bryce stiffened beside me. What? Alana blurted out, her voice shrill. Mr. Callahan cleared his throat. And to my son, Bryce, I leave. He paused, flipping the page. A trust fund of $50,000. I swear, you could have heard a pin drop. Bryce's face went pale. What the heck is this? He hissed under his breath. I was too stunned to speak. Jenna gets the house? Alana's voice was practically screeching now. Yes, Mr. Callahan said calmly. As per Margaret's wishes. After the will was read, chaos erupted. Bryce pulled me aside, his face flushed with anger. What did you do? He hissed, his eyes narrowing. Excuse me? Don't play innocent, Jenna, he snapped. What did you say to her? I didn't do anything, Bryce, I said quietly, my voice shaking. But he didn't believe me. He never did. It wasn't until a week later that I found out the truth. Margaret had written me a letter. It was delivered to me along with the legal documents finalizing the transfer of the estate. In it, she admitted everything. I know you've never felt welcome in this family, she wrote. And for that, I'm truly sorry. But I see things more clearly now. You were the only one who ever truly cared about Bryce, despite his flaws. And I know, he doesn't deserve you. Tears streamed down my face as I read those words. Margaret, of all people, had seen it. I stayed in that house for another month. Bryce and I barely spoke. He was furious, resentful. And then one day, I woke up and realized I was done. I packed a bag, left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, and walked out of that mansion for good. I didn't look back. Divorce papers were served within a week. Bryce tried to fight it, tried to contest the will. But Margaret had been thorough. The house was mine. It's been a year now. I sold the estate and moved back to Connecticut, bought a little cottage by the water. Quiet, peaceful. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. And for the first time in years, I feel free. I learned a lot from that family. But the biggest lesson? Sometimes walking away isn't a weakness. It's strength. And sometimes revenge doesn't come with fireworks or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's just living well. And I'm doing just that. After the stunner of the will, the air in the room was so thick it felt suffocating. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Alana was the first to break the silence. This is a joke, right? She said, her voice laced with disbelief as she turned to Mr. Callahan. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the table, an agitated rhythm that echoed in the silent room. I assure you, it's not, Mr. Callahan replied, his tone calm but firm. Alana's face twisted in anger. There's no way my mother would leave the estate to her. Her eyes cut toward me, filled with venom. Alana, Harold murmured, his voice carrying a warning, but she ignored him. This isn't happening, she muttered, shaking her head. Mom must have been out of her mind when she did this. Margaret was of sound mind, Mr. Callahan said, his gaze steady. I oversaw the entire process. Alana's mouth opened to argue, but Zane placed a hand on her arm. Alana, he murmured quietly. Not now. I was still trying to process everything, my heart pounding in my ears. Bryce hadn't moved. He was sitting so still it was almost unnerving. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the vein in his neck pulsing. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling in my lap. This wasn't how I expected this to go. Later that night, after the chaos had settled and everyone had left the estate, Bryce and I drove back to our townhouse in complete silence. I didn't dare say a word, but I could feel the tension radiating off him like a furnace. When we walked through the front door, I barely had time to set my purse down before he exploded. What did you do, Jenna? I froze. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to face him. Excuse me? Bryce's face was red, his eyes wild with anger. Don't play dumb, he snapped, his voice dangerously low. Bryce, I didn't do anything, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Nonsense. He stepped closer, his jaw clenched. You manipulated her. You somehow convinced my mother to leave everything to you. My stomach turned. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dead serious. Bryce. I had no idea Margaret was going to do that. I said, my throat tightening. I didn't ask for any of this. But he wasn't listening. She knew I was supposed to inherit that estate. He hissed, his eyes narrowing. I was supposed to get the house. Not you. Bryce, and now? He let out a bitter laugh. You have everything. And I'm left with what? 50 grand. Do you hear yourself right now? I asked, my voice trembling. You're mad at me? I didn't ask for any of this. Bryce's eyes darkened. But you didn't say no, did you? That hit me like a punch to the gut. Over the next few days, Bryce's attitude went from cold indifference to outright hostility. He barely spoke to me. And when he did, it was short, clipped responses. I tried to reach him, tried to talk through the tension building between us. Bryce, can we just talk? I asked one evening after dinner. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like I wasn't even there. What's there to talk about? He muttered, not looking up. Everything, I whispered, sitting down beside him. This isn't us. Bryce let out a bitter laugh. Isn't it? My stomach twisted. We can fix this, I murmured, reaching for his hand. But he pulled away. I don't want to fix it, Jenna. His tone was ice cold. My heart dropped. What are you saying? Bryce finally looked up, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the truth in his eyes. This marriage. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. It's over. As word spread about Margaret's will, the rest of the family wasted no time making their feelings known. Alana was the loudest. You don't deserve that house. She spat over the phone a few days later. My mother must have lost her mind. Alana, I didn't save it, she snapped. You're a gold digger, Jenna. Always have been. My blood ran cold. Alana, I didn't ask for any of this, I said softly. Right, she scoffed. And yet, somehow, you ended up with everything. Funny how that works. She hung up before I could say another word. I should have been used to their cruelty by now, but it still hurts. Maya wasn't much better. Look, she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy when she called. I don't know what you did to convince Margaret, but I think it's best if you, I don't know, disappear for a while. Disappear? I repeated, stunned. You know, give the family some space, she said with a sickeningly sweet tone. You've caused enough damage. But the real blade to the heart came from Bryce. I'd been trying to sort through the legal documents that came with inheriting the estate when I noticed things weren't adding up. Payments I hadn't authorized. Money missing from accounts I didn't even know Bryce had access to. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. I confronted him one night after I found yet another unauthorized transaction. Bryce, I said, holding up the bank statement. What the heck is this? He barely glanced at it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. My voice rose. Bryce, you've been draining accounts that have my name on them. He shrugged, like it was nothing. Bryce, this is illegal. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw the man I used to love. But then, he smirked. Not if you don't report it. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. Bryce leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. You wouldn't want to drag this out, would you? He said casually. Think about the headlines. Bitter wife tries to ruin her husband after inheriting his family's fortune. I couldn't breathe. He wasn't just trying to take the money. He was trying to destroy me. The night after I confronted Bryce about the missing money, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How long had he been siphoning money from our accounts? And more importantly, why? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. So the next morning, while Bryce was out at one of his so-called business meetings, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Lila Moreno, and she came highly recommended by a friend who'd gone through a nasty divorce. Lila was sharp, no nonsense, and had a reputation for uncovering secrets people wanted buried. I'll be honest with you, she said as we sat in a cozy coffee shop in Beacon Hill. If your husband's been hiding things, I'll find out. I nodded, my hands trembling around my coffee cup. I need to know, Lila. Whatever it is. I need to know the truth. Lila gave me a reassuring smile. Consider it done. It didn't take long for Lila to dig up dirt, and what she found was worse than I could have ever imagined. A week later, she called me and asked to meet. We sat in the same coffee shop, but this time, I could tell by her expression that it wasn't good news. I'm going to be blunt, Jenna, she said, sliding a folder across the table. My stomach twisted as I opened it. Inside were pages of financial statements, photos, and receipts. So, not only has Bryce been draining your accounts, Lila began, her tone grim, but he's been funneling the money into a separate account. Offshore. My hands shook as I flipped through the documents. Cayman Islands, she added. Classic move for someone trying to hide assets before a divorce. My head spun. He's been preparing for this, I whispered. Looks like it. But that wasn't even the worst part. Jenna, Lila said gently, placing her hand on mine to steady me. There's more. I swallowed hard, bracing myself. He's seeing someone. The words hit me like a freight train. I felt the air leave my lungs. What? Lila nodded, her expression sympathetic. Her name's Tasha. Younger. I work in real estate. They've been seeing each other for almost a year. A year. An entire year. I felt like the room was spinning. He's been using your money to fund his little side life, Lila added softly. Trips. Gifts. Even a down payment on a condo in Miami. Tears blurred my vision. I gripped the table to steady myself. Why? My voice cracked. Why didn't I see it? Lila's eyes softened. Because you wanted to believe in him. That night, I waited for Bryce to come home. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to see how long he'd keep up the charade. When he finally walked through the door, I could smell the alcohol on him. Where were you? I asked softly, standing in the doorway of the living room. Bryce barely looked at me as he set his keys on the counter. Out. Out where? Jesus, Jenna, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Do we have to do this right now? I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Who is she? Bryce froze. For a split second, I saw the panic in his eyes. But then, like the manipulator he was, he recovered. What are you talking about? He asked, feigning innocence. I held up the folder Lila had given me. His eyes darted to it, and I saw the blood drain from his face. Tasha, I whispered, my voice shaking. That's her name, isn't it? Bryce's jaw clenched. Don't lie to me, Bryce. My voice was steadier now. Stronger. Jenna. He took a step toward me, but I backed away. Don't. For the first time in a long time, I saw something in his eyes. Fear. I know everything, I said softly. The offshore accounts. The condo. The money you stole from me. Jenna, it's not what you think. Stop lying. I snapped, my voice echoing off the walls. Bryce's expression hardened. Fine, he muttered, his tone cold. You want the truth? I crossed my arms, my jaw clenched. Yeah, I do. His lips curled into a bitter smile. All right, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Yes, I'm seeing someone. Yes, I moved money. And yes. He paused, his eyes narrowing. I was planning to leave you, but not before making sure you walked away with nothing. My heart shattered. But now? He laughed, shaking his head. Now, thanks to my dear mother, you have everything. The way he said it was so full of venom and resentment made my skin crawl. I stared at him, feeling a cold sense of clarity wash over me. This marriage, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper, was a lie. Bryce didn't deny it. He just stared at me. And that's when I knew. I was done. But walking away wasn't going to be that easy. Because Margaret's will had left me with more than just an estate. It had left me with a target on my back. Alana wasn't going to let it go. Neither was Bryce. And they weren't done with me yet. The days after that confrontation with Bryce felt like living in a nightmare. He didn't even bother to pretend anymore. Some nights, he wouldn't come home. When he did, he barely spoke to me. And when he did speak, it was all bitterness and sarcasm. You should be grateful, he muttered one night as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. Grateful? I repeated, my voice cold. Yeah, he took a long swig. For everything I did for you. You wouldn't be where you are without me. I couldn't believe the audacity. You mean stealing from me? I shot back. Call it what you want. He shrugged, not even trying to hide his smugness. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. You're unbelievable, I murmured, my voice shaking with rage. But Bryce just smirked. And you're stuck with me, sweetheart. Bryce wasn't going to walk away quietly. I knew that. But I didn't expect him to get this nasty. A few days after I confronted him, I got a call from my lawyer, Mason Caldwell. Jenna, Mason's voice was tight. We have a problem. I felt my stomach drop. What now? Bryce's lawyer filed a motion to contest the will. Contest the will? What? I almost dropped my phone. Apparently, Mason sighed. He's claiming undue influence. Says you manipulated Margaret into changing her will. My jaw clenched. That's nonsense. I know, Mason said, his tone grim. But it's a serious claim. If they can prove it. I swallowed hard. Jenna, he said gently, we need to be prepared. This could get ugly. I closed my eyes, my mind spinning. Okay, I whispered. Do whatever you have to do. It didn't take long for the family to start their smear campaign. Suddenly, stories about me started popping up in the local gossip circles. Gold digger, manipulator, scheming widow. I saw the headlines. I heard the whispers. Even friends I thought I could trust were giving me side glances at the country club and whispering behind my back. Maya, of course, was leading the charge. She cornered me at a charity event a week later, her fake smile barely concealing her malice. Jenna, she purred, her eyes glittering with fake concern. How are you holding up? I knew better than to play her game. Cut the crap, Maya, I said coolly, my expression unreadable. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. Ah, she cooed, still so defensive. I was just wondering how it feels. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper, knowing that everyone sees you for what you really are. I didn't flinch. Funny, I murmured, a tight smile tugging at my lips. Because from where I'm standing, the only thing people see is a bitter family that couldn't handle losing. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't over, she hissed. Bring on. I turned and walked away, but I could feel her glare burning into my back. But Alana was the real warning. She wasn't just going to spread rumors, she was going to act. 2 days later, I got another call from Mason. Jenna, he said, his voice tight. Alana just filed a lawsuit. I felt the blood drain from my face. For what? Fraud, Mason said grimly. She's claiming that you coerced Margaret into signing over the estate while she was mentally unfit. I nearly dropped the phone. That's insane. Insane or not, Mason said, she's playing hardball. And if this goes to court, I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. She's trying to drain me. I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Mason didn't deny it. She knows you inherited everything, he said quietly. And she's hoping you'll give up before this drags out. My blood boiled. Oh, she's dead wrong, I whispered. But Alana wasn't the only one with a plan. Bryce had his own dirty tricks up his sleeve. One evening, while I was at home going through yet another stack of legal documents, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You might want to check your inbox. My stomach dropped. I opened my laptop and logged into my email. And there it was. An email with the subject line, proof of Jenna's lies. I clicked it, and my heart nearly stopped. Attached were fabricated emails, photos, and fake evidence that made it look like I had manipulated Margaret into changing her will. They'd created an entire fake narrative. Son of a winch, I whispered, my hand shaking. My phone buzzed again. Bryce, it doesn't have to be this way. Walk away now, or I'll make sure this goes public. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I was done being his victim. Bring it. I typed back, hitting send before I could think twice. It felt like I was fighting a war on every front. Alana was trying to bleed me dry with legal battles. Maya was tarnishing my reputation at every opportunity. And Bryce? He was doing everything in his power to destroy me from the inside out. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to break. Not now. Not after everything. They thought they had me cornered. But what they didn't know, I had a plan of my own. I wasn't just sitting back and waiting to be taken down. I was collecting evidence. I hired forensic accountants to trace every dollar Bryce had siphoned. I had Lila following Tasha, documenting every secret meeting and shady transaction. And I was working with Mason to build an airtight case that would bury them all. I bided my time. Every smirk, every warning, and every dirty trick they pulled only fueled my determination. While Bryce and Alana thought they were winning, I was building my case, piece by piece. Mason and I worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Lila kept feeding me dirt on Bryce's side dalliance with Tasha. And the forensic accountants? They had uncovered enough proof to sink Bryce into a legal pit he'd never climb out of. But I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. No, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. That moment came 3 months later. Bryce had been pressuring me to settle and walk away quietly. His latest stunt? Offering me a pitiful settlement in exchange for dropping my claims to the estate. Jenna, let's be reasonable, Bryce had said, flashing that same arrogant smirk I used to find charming. Reasonable? Oh, I was about to be very reasonable. We met at his lawyer's office. Bryce was sitting across from me, his smug confidence filling the room. Alana was there, too, watching like a hawk, waiting for me to break. Jenna, Bryce's lawyer, Richard Green, began, his tone oozing fake politeness. This offer is more than fair considering the circumstances. If you agree to sign, he slid a thick envelope toward me. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I pulled out my folder. I have a counteroffer, I said smoothly, sliding it across the table. Bryce raised an eyebrow. What's this? Proof, I said, my voice calm but laced with steel. Bryce's smug grin faltered as he opened the folder. Inside was everything. White heavy checkmark bank statements showing the money he siphoned into offshore accounts. White heavy checkmark records of his secret condo purchase with my money. White heavy checkmark photos of him and Tasha on multiple occasions. And the best part? White heavy checkmark emails between him and Alana, plotting to contest the will and manipulate me into giving up the estate. I had them both. Bryce's face went pale as he flipped through the documents. Where the heck did you get this? He growled, his voice low. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. Doesn't matter, I said coolly. What matters is that it's all admissible in court. Alana's eyes darted to the folder, her face draining of color. This is all fabricated, she stammered, her voice shaky. Is it? I raised an eyebrow, tapping on a page. Because these emails came directly from Bryce's account. And the financial records? I gave a pointed look at Bryce. Well, offshore accounts leave a digital footprint. Silence. Dead. Silent. Bryce's lawyer cleared his throat, his expression now very different from the smugness he walked in with. Jenna, Bryce started, but I cut him off. Save it. I stood, my gaze steady. Here's how this is going to go. I laid out my terms with calm precision. I keep everything. The estate. The money. All of it. Bryce signs an ironclad divorce agreement. No alimony. No further claims. Alana drops her lawsuit immediately. Or I make the emails and evidence public. And if you don't agree, I lean forward, looking directly at Bryce. I'll make sure the IRS knows about those offshore accounts. Bryce's eyes went wide, and I'm sure they'd love to investigate where that money came from. I added sweetly. Alana's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Bryce? He knew I had it by the balls. I saw the exact moment he realized he'd lost. Fine, Bryce finally muttered, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. Good. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. And Bryce? He looked up, his eyes filled with fury. Send my regards to Tasha. The vein in his neck pulsed, but he didn't say a word. As for Alana, she tried to play tough, but once her lawyer saw the evidence, he even advised her to back off. She dropped her lawsuit, but not before word accidentally got out about her attempt to undermine her own mother's final wishes. The wrongdoing spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the perfect daughter was being whispered about at every charity gala and social event. Did you hear? Alana tried to steal her own mother's estate. Unbelievable. I always knew she was a snake. Her reputation? In shambles. But Bryce's downfall was the most satisfying of all. After the divorce was finalized, I leaked just enough information to the right people. Bryce's offshore accounts? Investigated. His shady dealings with Tasha? Exposed. The condo in Miami? Sold to cover the legal fees he was drowning in. And Tasha? Once she realized Bryce wasn't the cash cow she thought he was, She dumped him. Bryce went from living a life of luxury to scrambling to keep up appearances. No house, no money, no cushy reputation, just nothing. As for me, I walked away with everything. The estate, Margaret's legacy, the life I had fought so hard to protect. But more importantly, I walked away with my dignity. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from the lies, free from Bryce's manipulations, and free to finally build a life on my terms. A year later, I was sitting on the terrace of the estate, sipping my coffee and watching the sunrise. My phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Former investment banker Bryce Calloway declares bankruptcy after IRS investigation. I couldn't help but smile. Poetic justice. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. Karma did all the work for me. Cheers to that, I murmured, raising my coffee in the air. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt truly at peace. I didn't look back. I had new plans, new dreams, and for the first time in a long time, they were all mine. I went for a clean sweep revenge without crossing any lines. Sweet, sweet justice served.